Matthew, how important was it for you to get this done before the season started? I mean, obviously you're focused on football, but how important before this year started for you?
It was important. It wasn't something that all along I knew was going to be the case, but as it got into training camp a little bit, I realized that, I think we have an extremely talented team, and for us to be worrying about, or anybody, even myself, about my contract situation or what it was going to be, was going to be a disservice to the organization, to our team, to the players in the locker room. So I wanted to get this thing done and kind of realized that during training camp. And, like Bob said, without Mrs. Ford, Bob's hard work, Matt Harris, Rod Wood, coach, everybody involved, it took everybody to get it done in the time frame it did, and including Tom Connon and my guys at CA. So I just couldn't have done it, obviously, without those guys, and appreciate it. I'm just glad that we're getting this thing wrapped up and we can move on to the season.
Matthew, what's it like being the highest paid player in the NFL?
It's not much different than I feel yesterday. I work extremely hard, no matter what my salary is for the year or anything like that. It's just part of what comes with the position of playing quarterback in this league and playing it at a high level, and that's what I strive to do. And I don't do that for anything other than the guys in the locker room, the coaching staff that puts in all the hard work to get us ready to play, and my teammates. Obviously couldn't have, gotten to this point without a lot of help from all those guys.
A situation here that you wanted to look for the long term, either the present or the future. What was it about you wanted to make this commitment?
I've loved playing here. I'm going to continue to love playing here. Obviously a great ownership group. I love playing for the Fords. Mrs. Ford reached out to me today. Had a great conversation with her. Her family is always around and great, so that makes it a lot of fun for me. And then, the guys in the locker room, teammates, coaches, front office guys, we're all involved. We're all in this, and I consider myself lucky to be a part of it. And, just happy that I can continue here for another 6 at least.
Establishing priorities in football is an essential component to winning. And for Detroit Lions general manager Bob Quinn, signing Matthew Stafford to a long-term extension was priority number 1 this offseason.
I think I told Matt, I wanted to get it done the first time we talked about it, but, I knew it takes time. So, I think I didn't know Matthew. Matthew didn't know me. So I think it was a feeling-out process. I watched him their first off-season program work in the weight room. I saw him work in the OTAs. I saw him in the summer. So it didn't take long, but it's something that, you can't jump in with 2 feet until you date for a little while.
Now that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, the question now becomes, can Stafford deliver on the field just as the Lions have now delivered in his bank account, and take the team to the next level? Michael Steitz is a Detroit Lions pregame show host for the Lions radio network, WJR 760. He joined me on Friday to preview the Lions' upcoming season and to dish on Stafford's new deal. So first of all, Michael, we want to take the time and welcome you back to the Two Man Advantage podcast, and we're excited to talk some Detroit Lions football with you this afternoon.
Yeah, great to be back on, man. Thanks for having me, Kev.
So when we look at this offseason, obviously one of the biggest things that Bob Quinn wanted to get done was the deal with Matthew Stafford, and they obviously got that done. So we'll start you off by asking you just your general impressions of the new Stafford deal and what it means for the franchise.
I think it's a great deal, and I think it was their only play. When you look at quarterback play around the league, and look, the salaries have gone up. That's kind of the temperature of the position, right? When you play well at quarterback, the numbers keep going up. Each guy becomes the highest paid guy, and it's really only for a small matter of time before the next guy gets his deal when his deal's up. But when you look at the quarterback play around the league as a whole, the top tier guys give their team a chance to win every single week, and I think that's what Matthew Stafford does for the Lions. And sure, he's not Tom Brady. Sure, he's not Aaron Rodgers. He's not even Drew Brees. But he's still one of the top 10 best quarterbacks in the league, and he gives the Lions a chance to win each week. So rather than let him go out there play his last year and have to deal with the franchise tag. Then you're going to have to pay him a high salary anyway. They get it done. And not to mention they like Stafford. They want to keep him here. So there's also the relationship angle outside of his play on the field. They lock him up. They keep him here. And that's one thing, a major thing, that they don't have to worry about. And they can just focus on the rest of the team. I thought it was their only move.
And what does it say about Stafford and wanting to be a part of this organization moving forward? Because we've seen players that the Lions have drafted who are either not in the league anymore or with a different organization. So what does it say about Stafford and wanting for him to stay here?
I think it says he loves this team and he loves this city. I mean, and look at the quarterbacks, and God, I don't have to list them off for you, Kevin. I mean, it's a laundry list of quarterbacks before Matthew Stafford in Detroit, and he's locked up that position and then a mainstay there for them. He gives them, he gives them stability at that position. I mean, look at a team like the Cleveland Browns. My goodness, they've had like 20 some odd quarterbacks start for them the last decade or so, even less probably. So the fact that he wants to be here and didn't want to go someplace else made it a lot easier, I think, on Bob Quinn and the Ford family to get this done for him. So,
and what do you think it says about Stafford? Because everything else on his resume besides the winning part of it is there. So how do you think Stafford can take the next step in his career?
Well, I think his play's got to continue to play at a high level. And when you look at last year, I mean, God, if they didn't have Stafford, how many games did they have won? The guy won, I think it was 8. Yeah, it was 8 come from behind victories out of their 9 wins. He needs pieces around him. I don't care how great of a quarterback you are in the NFL, and there are certainly great ones. They can't do it alone. And you look at Stafford, look at his running game statistics. All the years he's been here,
he hasn't had one.
Right. Look at the defenses he's had. I think one of the best defenses he had was 2014. They were 11-5 in Caldwell's first year, and they certainly got hosed on a bad penalty that wasn't called against Dallas. But they could have won their first playoff game since 1991 that year for sure. They struggled in 15. He even got benched, but his numbers have been lights out. He's the quickest quarterback to get to 30,000 yards. I mean, he's put up 4,000 yards every year. And last year was even a greater sign because a lot of people said, what? What was the big criticism? It was, he's got Calvin Johnson. He's got Calvin Johnson. Well, last year he didn't have Calvin Johnson, and look at the numbers he put up. So I think he will continue to raise his level of play, and he certainly needs to, getting that kind of deal. He's got to get them in the playoffs. But he needs surrounding pieces to do it. He can't do it just on his right arm alone.
And my final question on this particular topic before we move on is during the press conference announcing this, Bob Quinn sort of went through the maturation process and getting to know Stafford and how he operates. So can you talk to me about how this deal sort of ties Quinn to Stafford too?
Yeah, it definitely ties Quinn to Stafford. You know, the success, those two they'll be married together. I mean, Caldwell, you don't know because this is a lame duck year for him, and if they don't make the playoffs, it's likely that Jim Caldwell won't be back in Detroit, for a 5th season. But yeah, I mean, as long as Quinn's here and they got Stafford locked up, they're definitely tied together. And I think Quinn's a bright guy. He certainly, it speaks for itself, the organization he came from in the New England Patriots and the man, Bill Belichick, that he learned under. And he's been impressed with Stafford's work ethic, getting to know him, seeing all the things he's done in the offseason. And, Bob Quinn wanted to get this deal done. And again, why? Because he knows how valuable the quarterback position is for your chances of winning in the NFL. So going forward, yeah, Bob Quinn's success is directly tied to Matthew Stafford's and vice versa.
Now, going into the season, I have to be honest with you, Michael. One of the biggest concerns I have about this football team is their ability to rush the passer. Certainly, the injury to Kerry Hyder doesn't help. They've got a lot of young players, and with 2 suspensions to start the season, getting pressure on the quarterback has to be of a concern for the Lions, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest chief concerns they have going into 2017. And I think as much as you can't get too high and you can't get too low on opening week, it's going to be a big test, and it's going to say a lot about this team, specifically on the defense and the defensive line. Carson Palmer, plenty of weapons to toss the ball to with a future Hall of Fame receiver in Larry Fitzgerald. You got J.J. Nelson, who's a burner down the field. John Brown is another stud. So if they don't get keyed on Palmer, he's going to pick them apart. And they need to. They get Ziggy Ansah back, but do we know what Ziggy Ansah we're getting? We don't, because he hasn't played all camp. So we don't know how healthy he is, how many reps he's going to get, and if he's going to be effective. Last year, certainly he was not, due to being hampered by that ankle sprain for the majority of the year. Even when he came back, he clearly wasn't 100%, only had 2 sacks. They bring in Cornelius Washington from the Bears. He's going to start on the opposite side. You mentioned they lose Hyder. That was certainly a tough blow for them. Hyder, 8 sacks last season. Anthony Zettel is in the rotation now. He's looked great during training camp. He worked a lot in the offseason. You can see his first step is much quicker. His explosion is much more powerful this season. The game, he said, for him is kind of slowed down a little bit, now that it's year 2. So look for him to try to get in there and make some things happen in the rotation. But it's certainly one of the biggest, if not the biggest, question marks surrounding the entire team is, can they generate a pass rush? And we're going to find out at 1 o'clock on Sunday.
Now, conversely, on offense, all they've talked about during this preseason and training camp period is the importance of trying to generate a running game. Now, Amir Abdullah's back. Theo Riddick is also back from their injuries as well. How important do you think it will be for the Lions to generate a respectable running game?
I think if they can generate a respectable running game, I think Matthew Stafford will be that much more better than he already is. And I just think it makes this offense so much more dangerous. Also, too, they're going to run some 2 tight end sets now with Darren Fells. They're going to give teams some different looks. But if Abdullah and Riddick can stay healthy for 16 games, it's going to change a lot of things. I mean, Abdullah is just another one that had a great camp, and a lot of people have called him injury prone and saying he can't stay healthy, and it's nonsense. Last year was the guy's first injury of his career. He had shoulder surgery in the off season before 2016, and he was healthy all the years he played in Nebraska. So the idea that this guy can't stay healthy is nonsense. And he's had a great camp. The guy's decisive, quick, and he's a smart player. And the combination with him and Riddick, it's deadly. And we saw it, albeit a short sampling last year in the first 2 games before Abdullah got hurt. But those 2 guys bring very unique skill sets to the game. I mean, Riddick is one of the best pass-catching running backs in the league. And he's a mismatch problem anywhere you line him up. So keeping those 2 guys is healthy, and I think if they do keep them healthy, I think Abdullah could threaten. I don't want to say he can get over 1,000, but I think he can certainly get close to 1,000 yards. And compared to what we've seen them get the last few years in the backfield, I think that bodes well for this offense.
Now, you talked about it earlier in the interview and having Caldwell enter a lame duck season and not getting the extension. So how important do you think a fast start will be for giving the organization a confidence that Caldwell is the guy?
Well, I mean, I think that he's going to have to make the playoffs this year. I mean, that's usually the sign of not getting renewed, is and the NFL is a what have you done for me lately business. And Caldwell, listen, he got him in the playoffs twice. I thought when he got him in the playoffs last year, with all the injuries they had, and still got them to -9-7. And they were, remember, they were playing for the division title at the end of the year. I thought that would have been enough for them to renew him, but also too, he's not Bob Quinn's guy. Well, normally when a GM comes in, they usually get to hire their coach. He didn't, so I think if he doesn't get them to the playoffs this year, he'll probably be out of town. Do I think it's a distraction to the team? I don't want to say no, but I mean, there's definitely going to be questions that are going to come up. If they get on a losing streak, it's going to be, how do you feel about your job? I mean, he was asked questions about his last year just this week, the last couple of days. So I don't think it'll be too much of a distraction. It certainly won't if they're winning, because they'll probably get renewed. But I think in order for Jim to come back next season, it's going to have to be a playoff spot for the Lions this year.
Now, when I look at their schedule, they've got one of the more difficult schedules in the league. They play the AFC North this year. Here they open up with Arizona and New York. So can you just give me your general impressions on their overall schedule?
They definitely have I think they're a better team this year, but they have a tougher schedule. And, right off the bat, I mean, if they don't beat Arizona, Kevin, they're in a really tough spot, because they got to go to New York on Monday night, week 2. They have Atlanta week 3, and then they got to go on the road and play the Vikings week 4, which is always a tough divisional opponent for them, especially going to U.S. Bank. So it's a tough run. They're going to have some tough spots this year. So they certainly need to get off on a good start and get this win against Arizona. Otherwise, it's going to be tough sledding the rest of the way. Looking at the overall picture, I think they're going to be right around the last week of the season. I think they're going to be right around that 8-7 mark, trying to get a win to get in the playoffs. I think they'll be anywhere from 8-8 to 10-6, depending on a few things break. I think it'll be very similar to last year.
And what are your general impressions of the overall roster, strengths, weaknesses, and where do you think Bob Quinn will be keeping an eye on the roster throughout the course of the season?
I think certainly defensive line, which you and I have already discussed. You have to guarantee a veteran contract for the year before week 1. After week 1, you don't. So I think you could see some moves in the defensive line after the first game. I think they might be able to bring in a veteran. We'll see. That's certainly one to monitor. They made some interesting moves this year. They kept the 5th running back with Keon Green. They kept the 5th wide receiver with Jared Aberderis, which I thought was a great move. And also Aberderis provides special teams play too, which is why they shipped Bonamosi out to New England for a draft pick. So, tight ends, it's going to be interesting to see. Can Ebron stay healthy for 16 games? Can he elevate his play?
I think it's a critical year for him, because he's going into a contract year, right? And he's had a history of injuries. So
absolutely. So can he play 16? Can he elevate his game? They did pick up the 5th-year option, obviously, a few months ago. But I think it's still tied to that defensive line, and can they get better? And I think we'll have some questions as the season starts to unfold. But I would circle defensive line as the first spot. Bob Quinn tries to make some moves to improve the team.
And one of the things the Lions preached during training camp was the ability to create more turnovers, and they added players like DJ Hayden. They're expecting Quandre Diggs to take the next step. So I think certainly Slay's progression as well. So I'll be interested to see if they can create more turnovers as well.
They're certainly going to need them. I mean, they were starving for him at one point last year. It was like, my goodness, you guys got to get the ball. I mean, and when you have a quarterback like Matthew Stafford, and they have weapons on offense, they got to get the more possessions, the more points. It's pretty simple math, right? So they got to get some turnovers. Caldwell had said DJ Hayden and Diggs will both play in the nickel. He said that this week. And you have Glover Quinn, who's always ready and steady at that safety position. Darius Slay's got to step up and make more big plays. They got to force some fumbles. They got, I'm excited to see Jared Davis get unleashed. There's a guy that can blow people up at the linebacker spot. So but he's a rookie. He's still got stuff to learn. So I think there's a lot of question marks, but it's also a lot of excitement. You know, anytime you get a rookie stud linebacker in the mix, it's going to be fun to see that guy's development and see what he can do, and especially after he had a bad game against the Patriots, you know. It seems like a guy that's got the pedigree to answer the bell, so to speak, so it's going to be interesting to see how he plays week one. And also, too, on special teams, the punt return situation. You know, it's going to be Jamal Agnew and Golden Tate splitting duties. That's what Caldwell said today, so that will be interesting to watch, too.
And my final question for you, Michael, has to do with what do you think 3 keys to victory are for this game on Sunday and for the rest of the season?
Well, I don't know if I can give you keys to victories for the rest of the season, but for week one, I would say getting pressure on Carson Palmer, finding a way to slow down and keep a hand on Larry Fitzgerald, and finding a way to slow down David Johnson, who's a multifaceted threat out of the backfield, and getting that run game going right off the bat to help that offense. So I think those are the keys for Sunday for sure.
Fantastic, Michael. We want to thank you for your time, and we had a lot of fun talking some Detroit Lions football, and best of luck in covering this team, and hopefully they'll finish the deal in the playoffs this year, huh?
Well, remains to be seen, but week one is always exciting because everybody's undefeated in week one, right?
That's right. Have a great weekend, Michael. Enjoy covering the game, and thanks for your time, buddy.
Thank you, Kevin. All the best to you, my man.